Awesome to see Ariel here.
I'm also about mid-level with my knowledge on the financial markets, so I will try my best to provide my honest advice on how they work, like I always do. You guys have known me. But Ryan, we don't quite know you. Can you please introduce yourself briefly?
Let's wait until Shale
Yeah, let me
has
get
Started
confirmation.
the live stream yet, so
Oh,
Okay,
to get the YouTube up?
All right, looks like we're up.
the Twitch is
and
up.
Here we
But
go.
yeah, YouTube.
Now recording.
Welcome to a very special impromptu late night episode of the Yang Gang Roundtable. It is Wednesday, January 27th, 2021. Can everybody hear me okay? Everything going okay on the stream? Looks like I'm okay.
Yep.
All right. We've got Ariel, Faye, both Fays, Sheridan, myself, and our special guest Ryan, the investor, today, who has the up close and personal inside perspective on the events of the whole the GameStop casino, Wall Street casino.
That whole thing.
Unmasking. I don't know. What do you want to call it?
Bets craze is
the
what's
Wall Street
going
bet
on.
craze. We're here to talk about that on a special late night episode of the Yang Gang Roundtable. So, yeah.
So I suppose let's start with Ryan. If you could introduce yourself briefly, and then I'll introduce what actually started this whole podcast, because it's really interesting.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm just Ryan. I'm a random Yang Gang guy who did some volunteering on the trail all last year and didn't have anything to do, so I decided to teach myself how to trade stocks. And late last year, I caught on to the GameStop thesis on Reddit, and I rode that train all the way to today.
That's
Well,
really
it's
interesting.
fantastic
So
to have you.
that's
Thanks.
been months coming. Then this particular situation that we're facing today.
Years.
Yeah, we had a very good bit of excited talk before the show started. So if everyone remembers what they were excited to talk about,
So yeah, let me give to our audience what started this whole thing. Wall Street Bets, the Discord channel, got banned from the Discord platform. Ryan here thought that it was a inappropriate move given how limited the evidence of violation there was. However, I'm supporting Discord that they had every right to kick whoever they want off for whatever reason they want, and Discord is who we use. And that's the only position I have with it. I do support Wall Street Bets and the communal mass capitalism that we are seeing. But Ryan, if you could please explain the GameStop craze that's going on for the past few months.
All right. So how we got here, does anybody have somewhat of an understanding of what's actually happening today? Because today we've reached kind of a peak with this whole thing, and now like the mainstream media has been talking about it. There's been a ton of articles I'm sure you've seen.
I think we all have a different understanding, but yeah, just please give it to us in your own words so we kind of have a canonical understanding to go by for the rest of the show at least.
Got it.
Can
Okay.
I take a stab at this? Hold on.
Okay,
I want to
sure.
take a stab at this because I know very little about the stock market. I don't track it because I live in poverty. And so whenever somebody says, hey, you've got to do this, I'm always like, I've got nothing to start with. And then some people told me, oh, you should go to Robinhood and then you'll get a few credits or something, right?
So I will for our audience, because most of our audience is at your level, Faye.
Right.
Give
So
a
that's
very
what I'm saying.
brief
Like,
overlay.
let
The
me
stock
actually
market,
give you, yeah.
the stock
I
market
want-
is. Sorry, Faye. Do you have a specific question to start with?
Well, what I wanted to say was that I think that I'm a good person to give you sort of the layperson's view about what's going on, and a lot of our listeners are probably at my level, and so I'm thinking if I tell you where I'm at, and then you guys could fill in more important details.
Well, that's why I was going to go ahead and start, because I've known you for a bit, Faye. I figured that I'd be able to give you a good.
No, what I mean is, let me say what I actually know. Okay, based on 5 to 10 minutes, okay, of researching what's going on. So I read the article that Ariel sent, and it explained what a short sell was, which I've been explaining the same thing over and over in my life. I've heard this explanation many times, but it doesn't sit well with me, right? So, and I'm a math teacher, so I'm guessing it doesn't sit well with most people. Like
Yeah.
a short sell, right? Is when
Ah,
the investors actually borrow the stock and they sell it at a high price before they have to buy it back later. And so hopefully when they go to buy it, the price has dropped. And that way they make the in between, right? The margin in between.
That's exactly
Which
right.
never okay,
Mhm.
but this is very counterintuitive because most people think of an item as something you buy, right? And then you sell it. You can't sell
Well, the
something you
thing
don't
is you are
own
buying
and
it.
then you buy it later.
The thing with short selling is you are buying an item. You're buying the future drop in price, and
Yes.
that's what
I
you're
mean,
purchasing.
I know you want to explain it to me, but I'm just saying that this explanation is not satisfactory to the average person because
Oh, I
I
completely
can't
agree.
go, you know what I mean? Like I can't go
It's
and
because you're
sell
not
your
given the
house.
full context of the whole market. The
Wait,
whole
but
Well,
market is a collection of slips and prices and hearsay
I
that
just
fluctuate every day.
for
so
just
so
thing
what
is
I'm saying is it doesn't feel intuitive to most people because most people don't think of things like a car. I can't go and sell your car if I don't own it. But this is what's happening. It's like somebody's
yeah.
borrowed my car to sell it, and then later they're going to buy it from me.
Because
Wait a minute.
financial markets operate on an extra abstract level where you
Yes, this
can
extra
create nothing.
abstraction, yeah, is
Like
something that's
gangbang.
this is created by rules,
I,
right?
I
By the
actually
stock market
do.
rules.
I was hoping Ryan
Okay.
would elaborate on this in his chronology, but you actually touched on this with the short selling. There are
Yeah.
now
So
91 million shares of GameStop in theoretical existence, yet only 32 million are actually in financial institutions that can be purchased by the public. So there are
Okay,
3 times as many demand orders than there are physical shares of the company.
so now they're basically at this point they're like basically selling or they're buying
By
stock
the
that doesn't
way,
exist.
I just want
yeah.
to know,
So
Ryan, are
yeah.
you Macaulay Kong or is that somebody else?
Oh,
Oh man, we got to start
I'm
all
some.
over, huh?
That's not
Wow,
me. Yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
don't
not
know.
you.
No.
Okay,
No.
no, no.
That's
I
not
just
me.
okay,
Yeah.
good to know because I
No.
was
Different person.
because that was someone on Twitter arguing with Sheridan, and I just wanted to see. Okay, so that's not
Yeah.
you. Okay, okay. Just making
Yeah.
I'm just
Someone
making
else.
sure because yeah, that whole thing was going on, and they were asked to like come in and talk, but something happened. So it's not you. Okay, just good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we're trying
So
to figure out okay, so basically what's happened now is that a GameStop, stock was being short sold, had a lot of people short selling it. And
yeah.
so
Yeah.
on Reddit, other people decided we're not going to let them, tank the stock by short selling. We're going to go ahead and buy, the stock and keep raising the price of it.
Yeah.
Does
So
that sound about right?
that's in a nutshell, that's somewhat accurate. So I'm glad you brought up short selling because that's basically at the center of why this whole thing is happening to begin with. Like today, so last year, GameStop was sitting at a solid $4 a share, and everyone was saying that GameStop was headed straight to bankruptcy. Right? Don't buy GameStop shares. Like avoid it. Uh, don't put any money into it. The company's going down. Today, GameStop closed at over $300 a share. Now it's sitting at 280 in the after hours. Right. So how did this happen? How did it go from $4 a share, looking at bankruptcy, to its share price being higher than Apple's? Right. It doesn't make sense. The reason the reason we got here is what you were saying is short selling, but it's not just short selling, right? Because short selling, if you want to short a share, you go to your broker and you're like, I think the price is going down. I want to borrow a share from you so I can sell it at the current price. Let's say it's $20, And then you have generally maybe 3 days or so to buy a share back at the market price and give it back to your broker and make him whole, right? So let's say you sell a share for $20, it goes down to 18. You buy it back for 18, you give it back to your broker. All well and good. The way we got into this is because there's a firm called Melvin Capital, uh, founded by a man named Gabriel Plotkin. Gabriel Plotkin used to work for Stephen A. Cohen, who in 2016 had to settle with the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, for $1.8 billion for securities fraud. 900 million of that was forfeiture, and 900 million was a fine. Gabriel Plotkin himself has been convicted of securities fraud in the Hong Kong exchange market. In any case, Melvin Capital was the big firm that primarily decided to look at GameStop, a company that was coming off of the end of a very long console cycle and the gradual decline of brick and mortar. And they say, okay, well, GameStop is, I think it was like $40 or $50 a share when they decided to start shorting it. GameStop is a company that we think is going to go out of business. So why don't we help it go out of business and make money on the way down? So normally, if you are theoretically having a market decide whether or not GameStop is going to go down or not, right? People are holding the share and they'll sell it to each other, right? Or they'll buy them from each other. If you think that GameStop is okay or it's going to go up, and it's like $20, slowly by buying it at or above that price, you'll raise the price. If you think it's going down, you'll sell your shares for a bit less, and that will tank the price. What Melvin Capital did, which has been illegal since 2008 financial crisis, is they did something called naked short selling. That's when you go to your broker and you borrow a share, but neither you or the broker make sure that you can have that share in your custody. So what happens is you essentially generate a share that doesn't exist, and you short it, you sell it, and that creates a selling pressure that isn't supposed to exist. Because like Sheridan was saying, I think you pulled the number like 90 million shares sold short. There's more selling pressure in shares than the company actually issued for people to own. And so what that means is they got the price all the way down from $40 or $50 to $4. And I think
hold on.
Yeah.
Just 1 minute. So this is something that happens to more companies than GameStop.
Yes,
This has happened to other companies before.
This is actually what I really want to touch in after we cover the basic chronology, is a new industry that Wall Street Bets could actually turn into an entire stock brokerage level company if they have actual guts, balls, and leadership.
Yeah. So they managed to put a bunch of selling pressure on the shares of GameStop, and at the same time they use their connections with the media and other analysts like Citron to spread news and say, oh, GameStop's going out of business, this, that, and the other. Well, last year in 2020, in March, GameStop actually began to pivot. They began to do a turnaround for their business. They added the former president of Nintendo, Reggie Fils-Aimé, to their board, and they began to come up with a new strategy. Sometime around that time, there was a Redditor. His username was Deep Fucking Value. He's a securities analyst, and he streams on Twitch by the handle Roaring Kitty. And at that time, he posted a really good analysis of how GameStop wasn't actually in as much trouble as people were saying it was in. Like, its financials weren't that bad. They have like only 500 million debt. They're actually taking in a lot more revenue than people are assuming. Their leases are really short term, so they have a lot of mobility as far as not being stuck holding a bunch of worthless real estate. And so they can actually make a really good pivot. Right? There's a lot of factors in play that make GameStop worth way more than its valuation of $4 a share.
Oh,
at the time,
absolutely.
he put a $60,000 bet. Yeah, at the time he put a $60,000 bet on that, and every single month he would post to Wall Street Bets his update on how he was doing. At times he was down 50% to $30,000. Fast forward to today, I think his account has gone from $60,000 all the way to like 72 million, something like that. But the reason why, But the reason why this price action was allowed to happen is because when you have that many, like, so when you look at there's a few numbers you look at when you're judging the price of a stock, and the number that matters the most in this particular situation is that short interest that Sheridan alluded to earlier, where he was saying that 3 times the amount of shares sold short, in this case, than exist. A lot of analysts or investors will tell you that 30% of the interest being sold short is already a lot. So now we're anywhere from 138 to 300%, which is astronomical, right? So this Wall Street Bets community picked up on this and really got behind it late last year, because everyone started to finally really do the math and like see the effect of this and start to buy. So in December, it went from $12 to $20. January, it jumped to 40, and now we're here in record time. And the reason is because if you are shorting, and let's say you're shorting and you're borrowing shares at $4 and you're trying to short it down, at that time, because the difference between the short price and the price movement is not that, like, it's not moving, it's not going up or down. Melvin Capital could have just bought a bunch of shares to close out their position relatively cheaply, right? They could have gotten out of that situation. But as soon as Reddit started buying and raising the price, instead of taking a loss, Melvin Capital doubled down on that position and started shorting even more aggressively. And so they started borrowing shares at $4 and then not repaying them even after it had gone up to $12, and then continuing that from $12 to 16 to 20, so on and so forth, and building themselves into a mountain of more and more debt.
And that's the real key there, is this snowballed because an institution got institutionally ballsy. I am all for letting capitalism reign, but we have let neoliberalism reign for so many decades that you kind of do have to have government support in some areas. Melvin Capital actually filed for bankruptcy today, but they aren't exactly folding. They're actually transferring most of their capital into a new company with no liabilities.
Yeah, so
So I
so
love the short selling industry that is propping up, because it can be a great force for capitalistic good. But right now, like you were alluding to earlier, people are really hurting and need this cash. So financial bubbles aren't exactly going to be the Hail Mary that most people are putting this on to be.
so I'm not making any claims about like what this particular
Oh,
situation
I'm not alluding to you are. I'm saying most of the Twitter and Reddit community are, because holy crap, this thing has exploded.
Right.
Well,
And yeah,
what I was reading was saying that it seemed like, once the stock price keeps going up and it never seems to be coming back down, then those who did the short sell are put into pressure to, you know, try to get out of that position
Well,
that they're in and try to buy
that's
it back before it goes up even more, and they're going to be having
that's
an
where I
even
talk
higher
about
loss.
the institutional ballsiness. Is this is the breakdown between theoretical capitalism and operational capitalism. The way the stock market physically works is individual brokerages will have a balance sheet of what everyone owns and what all the accounts are, and then they will have a bank account with all the money that everyone has given them to actually buy these shares into these companies, generally through IPOs or other more balance sheet transactions with other financial brokerages. However, these financial brokerages can't actually have a bank run happen on them, or else you're going to see prices crash and people be left with an empty bag. They aren't banks. Their money isn't guaranteed.
So basically, this is what's leading to the government wanting to bail out the hedge funds that are losing a huge amount of money right now, because it's not just the hedge fund managers that lose their money. It's the other people it's all the people who are participating in it.
So I have to actually interject and give a few more details. The first thing is
Okay.
I would disagree that this is a matter of institutional ballsiness, because naked short selling has been illegal since 2008. If the
So
SEC, if the government is complaining about something being wrong or out of control now, it's completely their fault, because Melvin Capital has been operating illegally for probably years on this trade, and maybe more trades like it.
I agree. And there's several short sold companies that are like this that are seeing similar skyrockets because of WSB. And this is where I think WSB has a market niche that they could absolutely capitalize on and truly turn into a force for capital good. But I doubt that they have the leadership or guts to do so.
Well,
If
the
they
problem is not leadership or guts. The whole thing behind Wall Street Bets, as I understand it, is that they are a bunch of people who don't take themselves too seriously. They refer to themselves with the words autists and retards. And even though most of the time they post really good research and due diligence, they just generally like to have fun. And having some kind of centralized leadership, one is they don't like that. When they try to make a Wall Street Bets Twitter account, the entire community overwhelmingly pressured the mods to take it down, because they didn't want to have an identity. They didn't want to be a hedge fund. They just wanted to stick to the engine that made them successful, which is using crowdsourcing to figure out what the best data was, and act on it, right? And
it's
in this way, it's
actually
not.
legal activity. So
It
what
is
you're
legal,
saying is
yeah.
the people who participated in that Wall Street Bets Reddit were doing things legally, whereas the
They're
hedge
doing
fund
things legally,
managers were doing
yeah.
illegal things and not being called out for it by
not
the
just
government.
illegal
Which
things.
should,
I do want to place a clear definition here. They were doing things against market forces. Though that's beyond illegal. That's unnatural.
Yeah.
Okay, I have some questions I need to
the,
ask at
the,
this point. I'm just
sure.
really, you guys, because a lot of this lingo is very new to me in the first place. But so when it comes to government wanting to just instantly jump in and do something right now to be like, oh, this is wrong. So what does that look like? What are they going to probably try to
It,
do or
it
doing?
really
Or I'm so confused. Like, what is the interjection that they will be probably pursuing over this?
it really
So
depends on who has the government's ear. It could
yeah.
be bankers pulling more weight and domain of financial markets to them. It could be investors pulling more freedom and luxury to create massive companies with massive debts and just offload them on markets. Or it could be heavy regulation of hedge funds that result in a lot of insolvency. At least those are the
So
paths I
yeah.
see.
One interesting answer to your question is this. Actually, sorry. I'll answer the question directly. If you're talking about the government intervening, if the government wanted to prevent something like this from ever happening again, all they would have to do is enforce or punish people for illegally short selling. The only reason we're talking about this right now is because they had years to go after Melvin Capital for illegally short selling GameStop, and they never did. Right? They just didn't care, because for them it's like, well, I'm sure we all know, like, big dollar donors get political influence, and a lot of these times, like Melvin Capital, for example, a lot of these hedge funds, you have to have wealth to have your money managed by them, right? They get a lot of good returns because they have the benefit of being able to use the media. They have the benefit of insider trading, so on and so forth, right? They don't like people operating on their turf. That's
But insider
how.
trading again is
Mhm.
illegal, technically.
Yes.
But
Yes,
always, I mean,
technically.
it's happening, but it's very difficult to
Unless you're
catch.
representative, unless you're a government, unless you're like a House representative, and I believe a senator. Yeah, it's
Oh, it's
illegal.
okay for senators to inside
Yeah, they
trade.
do have some
Wow.
absolutism powers with that. It is really uncanny.
Yeah, so there's a lot of issues here, but the underlying is if the laws were actually enforced on these people, we would never be seeing what we're seeing now. And
And
one
you're
thing that I have
absolutely
to
right.
touch on, yeah, one thing that I have to touch on is that one, there's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing when it comes to the market interacting in this way with companies, right? Because when GameStop, if the narrative is that GameStop is failing, right, and a company or in a hedge fund rather is illegally naked shorting their stocks down to zero, or almost like, or $4, that company actually has a lot less options to get out of debt, right? Because one thing that companies can do to pivot, to get out of debt, is they can sell shares, right? If their shares are only worth $4, that kind of sucks. So
They
one
can
of the
also
things that you
use
could
their.
see is as a
Sorry, I just want to interject. They can also use their company value as collateral to restructure their debt.
yes. And so now that the share price of GameStop has run up due to these market forces, these mechanics, they actually are in a really, really good position to actually get themselves out of debt and to pivot their company. So a lot of the times, like people will say that short sellers have an important role in the market. And in some cases, I would agree, because there are some people that label themselves as activist short sellers. Most of them
Not
do
when
tend
you're
to be
short selling billions of dollars. I would disagree there.
right. So I would say that most of them are totally fraudulent. Theoretically, they have a place in the market to short, fraudulent companies, but usually it's the kind of the opposite.
I do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I do want to also highlight one thing that GameStop did, which they do need to take credit for, is they took on another board member from the company Chewy. It was an online
Yes.
pet retailer. And that is definitely a great sign that shows that the company is trying to pivot from physical brick and mortar, which is just costly overhead, to an online presence, which is much more efficient for acquiring capital.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Sorry, Faye.
So I wanted to ask something, which is, maybe what about the possibility of just a simple bailout? They don't do any rule changes. They don't go after anybody. They just say, oh, well, they're strapped for cash. Somebody's going to who is going to lose a lot of money. So we'll just give them money. Do you think that could happen?
So I think that could happen, and that would be very unfortunate. One,
I don't think
because
I don't think it'd just be unfortunate. I think every single member of Wall Street Bets should grab a gun and get in the streets at that point.
Oh, wait.
It takes
That's a
less than
little too much.
24 hours for a single hedge fund who made a fuck up with their money on financial markets to
not
get
just their money.
billions of dollars specifically for them, and every American gets left out in the cold for months. It would be literal ignition of revolution for our country.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Faye.
I don't mean to be
So one thing
dramatic,
I
but
want.
that's what that would signify to me.
Yeah, so I just gotta say, Melvin Capital was not just playing with their money; they're playing with their money that their clients invested with them in their portfolio, right? And so that would be one argument with a bailout, to which I say too bad, because you invested your money with somebody who, if you did your research, you would know had been convicted of securities fraud and worked for a firm that was famously fined by the SEC, also for fraud, right? So if you put your money with a fraudster and they lose it doing something incredibly stupid, then sorry, but that's on you, right? If I, as an individual investor, if any of us, as an individual investor, go on Robinhood and we make a really dumb trade and we lose all of our money, it's cold hard capitalism for us, and it is socialism for hedge funds and Wall Street,
Yeah,
right?
that's the thing. It's like you know, we lose, but when they win, we don't see anything.
It's not
Yeah,
just
the
that, it becomes
amazing thing
incredibly
is
systemic. It becomes a precedent
right.
where if you want to have easy, free money with the full force of the US government, you have to fill out probably a few dozen forms, and you have perfect immunity with you and a few friends to do whatever
Right.
you
Well,
want across the entire world with American dollars. It would fracture our entire currency, fracture what it
basically,
means
like,
to be America.
we have an economy that has like cheat codes in it. That's basically what it boils down to. I mean, you want to talk about video game cheat codes when you put on a mod or you put on infinite health and infinite ammo. It's just like, hey, let me. No, I have the U.S. government cheat. I have the Congress cheat. That's the best cheat ever. I can't lose. It's like
Yeah.
So I don't even see how this is great, but it's like when they like that's the thing, socialize the losses and privatize the profits. So that's the definition of cheating. It's like, oh, this guy came into the casino, but he was already rich. So all you other small people who won a whole bunch of money in this casino, you have to give it up to him because that guy was already rich when he started gambling.
So, like,
That's
basically, everybody who gave money to Jeffrey Epstein should just lose their money. Too bad, because you shouldn't have given it to him.
Well, I
yeah.
mean,
What about
for
Bernie?
us, again, like if I trust somebody to invest my money and they turn out to be a fraudster, right? I could sue them, but then I have that money for a lawyer, this, that, and the other, right? If we give our money to someone to invest and they screw us over, they lose our money. Generally, we're hung out to dry, right? We don't have the government to protect us, and
If you
so
get love scammed, if you get
Well,
scammed, if you get scammed out of any house and home from some sort of a nursing home scam. I mean, there's all kinds of scams out there.
that's
Medical
actually the biggest
scams.
criticism of like Robinhood and these other app trading firms is that they are dark pools that are largely not federally backed. So if you do want to trade, at least trade with an official brokerage that has federal insurance.
Okay, so I don't know. I had heard good things about Robinhood. I never actually went ahead and did it. It
But
just seemed complicated, but
FDIC is only for like bet savings accounts and like checking accounts stuff. No friend.
Okay, I
Yeah,
want
it is,
to
but you do
ask.
get a lot more guarantees with Fidelity than you do with Robinhood.
Yeah.
So I have more questions. So we recognize there's been criminal activity, and we recognize what's going to happen as a high probability if they don't take action on this. How would they even go about finding the people who did the illegal activities?
It's pretty obvious, honestly.
So
I
it's
mean,
an
like
easy.
you
They
you
should just
literally
know.
you literally have to fill out forms to the government telling you what stocks you are purchasing and selling, especially in million bulk. And that's what these naked short sales were. Million bulk sales.
yeah,
so, and
about 5
I've
million at a
noticed that
time.
the story that you just told us, right? As somebody who, were you ever part of this Reddit community, Ryan?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So, like, the story that you're telling us is so different, I think, than what the general media has been portraying it as. And then when you go on Twitter, people get, what, 70 something characters or something to say something. And so most people just express a feeling that they have. It's very difficult to really, get the idea of what's really happening unless you get somebody, to tell the story, like the real story. And so we really
Well,
appreciate you
yeah.
coming out here to do that today.
Well, yeah.
And
Thanks for
you made
having
it,
me.
Yeah,
yeah,
thanks.
you made it seem like something that was very, like you said, it was a timely matter that we had to know about these things right now. And there was a reason for that. So why did we need to convene today to talk about this instead of waiting for,
Well,
Sunday or something like that?
well, one of the things is I think Sheridan was referencing earlier that there was a possibility that the government would, spend taxpayer money to help the shorts unwind from their position. Because, I mean, again, I'm not a financial advisor. I am a very new trader myself. I managed to make a decent amount of money off of this very mathematically predictable event. If
Indeed, very mathematically predictable. And I do
Yeah.
want to lean heavy for our audience that this was a game of math. There were only so many shares available, and there was so much ambition by this hedge fund that broke all rules of supply and demand and threw the graph completely out of whack. The reason we use economics and math to figure out this is because sometimes it is really, really clear in the math.
Yep.
So if you're actually an
yeah.
investor right now, what are some dangers that you might need to watch for, or opportunities that you might be watching for,
So
depending on how the
currently,
government plays out? Yeah.
the numbers show that the price of this share is going to continue to rise, and it's probably going to pop off logarithmically pretty soon. However, there is always the possibility of what we call in investing a black swan event, which is an event that is negative for the market and is completely unpredictable. And that could involve the government stepping in to halt trading on this share to let the short side of the trade, the hedge funds and stuff like that, sort out their balance sheets, make backroom deals to with the brokers to get out of that position. And then if that were to happen, then a lot of like Sheridan was saying, if that were to happen, a lot of retail investors, a lot of investment firms or hedge funds on the other side of the trade, the long side, would be left holding shares, and there would be no short interest pressure to keep the price going up. I don't know how likely that is to happen. I don't think the government has ever stepped in like that before, but you never know.
It would be truly, truly unprecedented. And when
Yeah.
I say truly unprecedented, I do have to remind our audience in 2008, the government gave $4 trillion to banks so that they wouldn't have insolvency on bad mortgages. And they kicked out millions of people in that same year. While in 2020, the worst economic crisis we've ever had, you got $1,800 for an entire fucking awful year, and millions are evicted without jobs and without health care. So there
Well
is a
below the
balance of
four.
power
Well,
that is broadly unbalanced.
that's well below the $4 billion total. I mean, $4 trillion total that they had used for the bailout before. But then again, they spent a lot of money on large corporations again this past year. So
Don't
we were
don't I
just a
believe
small
it as a
slice of
small
that pie.
business owner? It's been brutal trying to get just 10,000 measly dollars to keep the lights on.
And they were talking so much good stuff about their small business administration loans. But it's been very difficult for many small businesses to actually capture some of that.
That's an understatement, to say the least.
It's been difficult for individuals to even capture their own stimulus checks. We have people on our podcast who have never received theirs. And
Like
What's
me.
funny is when you do the math, it was the entire CARES Act and the second stimulus was intended to give every American around $13,000 to $28,000. Every single American, depending on your situation. And they could have just given us $2,000 a month and bit the difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, so given the volatility of everything, I find that interesting though, as a non-stock trader and somebody who just kind of stands on the sidelines a bit. GameStop, I don't know why anybody would think that they would tank right this minute. I mean, it seems that if you were at home and there were no new video game consoles coming to the United States, and you've been waiting for, a year for the what is it, the new Wii to come out?
The
What is it?
PS5 is what
The
the new
PS5.
generation is.
What about Animal Crossing was a big thing, but there
Yeah,
are
but
no more
that was actually
consoles. You
last
can't even
cycle.
buy them.
That was
Yeah.
at the
Right.
beginning of 2020, and Nintendo, I don't know how they managed to get that, right when everyone went into isolation, they made a killing. But the months
But what I
after
mean
that,
is, I've wanted an Animal Crossing and the console that it runs on, and there aren't any. You can't actually buy any. So there are
that's
no
what I
new
mean. It
consoles
was
for a while.
spectacular because the months following that, most video game companies actually stopped putting out their releases. They are still holding out for the spring of this year to start releasing their games because
Okay.
they're waiting for people to have money and confidence in buying an entertainment system.
But look, if you're at home and your children are now at home during the pandemic, and there's nothing you can do that is socially distanced, right? That you can't take them out and do certain things. We don't even go to playgrounds anymore with the kids, right? Video gaming has got to be a big part of a lot of people's lives, even more so than ever. And so GameStop, who trades in old systems and old games, must be doing great as far as I'm concerned. So obviously, to me, like I don't see why their stock would fail right now. If anything is going forward right now, it would be video gaming,
Well,
especially
like
used
Ryan was
games.
mentioning, this
Well,
was
you can also
legal.
buy video games at like Best Buys and stuff.
This
So
this was
yeah.
But
massive and
they only
illegal.
have new games. That's the thing, is GameStop has cornered the market on used games, used consoles, used, and
Actually,
that's what's available now. You don't
I have
have
a
anything
really
new.
interesting
Nothing
Reddit
new is
story
coming.
about that. They're used
Okay.
games. There's this one Redditor that will actually use GameStop as their bank because GameStops are more prevalent in their town than banks, and he kept getting overcharged with overdraft fees for no reason. So
But
he buys pre-ordered games and then cancels them or sells them back to GameStop for cash when he needs to withdraw anything. And he does that with
wow.
every paycheck.
And there's
Oh,
no fee?
Apparently not.
Wow.
okay. I have
This
some
is
questions actually
interesting.
regarding the whole game systems and stopping the selling and stuff. I was talking to someone who
Mhm.
was looking for a new game system, and somebody had bought up a bunch and charged hundreds more for these game systems. Is this not another way to scam people out of even more money? Is this not
It
something?
depends on what your definition of scam is, because there is a fine line between hyperinflation and normal yearly growth. If someone is charging for a very vintage or unique or artistic high value item, then that's technical skill. If someone is mass producing something and selling it for thousands of dollars ridiculously, then they're price gouging.
Yeah, so I
Gouging
think what
or
Faye,
hoarding sounds more like the right, like
yeah,
grab them all and then sell them for more money, make it
yeah,
more
I think
scarce.
that's what Faye was talking about was people at this point people use a lot of times bots to buy like Yeezys or other limited gear like Supreme stuff. Anything that's in demand. People will use bots to buy it up. At the beginning of COVID, actually, it was webcams that became super expensive, and you can get them anywhere because people were buying them up and they were scalping them. So
Really?
I think that's what Faye was. Yeah, yeah, it was a big thing. I think that's what Faye was asking about. But yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with GameStop in particular.
Yeah,
It's not
that's not financial markets. That's just people being greedy.
But
um,
that's
So
kind of what this all boils down to: is people are being greedy and they're trying to get money out of other people, and they're trying to
Well, it's at a different
manipulate markets
scale.
and demands
It's
and
at a different
costs.
scale. You're manipulating a market rather than a group of people.
Okay.
the market is
basically,
kind of made of people.
so what happens is when Melvin Capital shorted GameStop all the way from $40 or $50 down to $4, right? They
Mhm,
could have stopped there and they could have been like, okay, we win. When you're
mhm,
shorting, let's say you're shorting a stock down from 40 to 4, that's a big difference in price, right? That's a lot of profit you can make
mhm.
along the way. Shorting
That's
from 4
huge.
to 0 is barely anything. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no good reason to do that unless you actually want to bankrupt the company and put 45,000 people out of a job, right? So there's an element of, there is greed, obviously, on the investor side, the long side. People like myself, we see a unprecedented, math-supported opportunity to make a bunch of free money, and obviously
Yeah,
there's a profit motive
billions.
there, right? There's no point pretending that we're doing this just for justice, right? It's paying off really, really well. But
It is, but it's also for justice. Like a hedge
yeah,
fund dumped billions and billions into a short, doubled down on that short when it failed,
yeah,
and have just consistently made the wrong choice every step of the way.
yeah,
Companies are
I find
given
it,
opportunities.
yeah.
yeah, I find it great that, gamers, probably Reddit was filled with a lot of people who do games.
And
And
grew
that's
up
how
with
they were
GameStop
also,
and stuff. Yeah,
yeah, and it's like they rallied around a company that they actually do believe in. Otherwise, they
yeah,
wouldn't have bothered to buy it. And so,
yeah,
so that's why people are feeling like it's kind of people against the big, rich, wealthy, billionaires who are the players in the hedge fund world.
yeah.
Do average normal people also participate in hedge funds? I mean, because once you
No,
get past that barrier of that abstraction,
No. So, what
no.
average people will participate in is ETFs, indexes, or at best, mutual funds. You can
But
find
can't you?
plenty great mutual funds that will never ever dip into major hedges.
But
Hedges are
can't you?
for extremely wealthy people.
Okay, but can't you also buy a? Can't you also short anything as a single person, just playing with a little tiny bit of money?
You can, and that's actually the initial purpose of hedges and hedge funds. Hedge funds were for highly specialized firms so that they could hedge against bad market forces such as rapid technological innovation. The dot-com bubble is really what made hedge funds a popular investment vehicle.
And so individuals like who don't have a lot of money can also short a single stock and even do it maybe on a daily basis. Be a day
but
trader be doing that.
yeah. So I just want to say,
Okay.
shorting is a very dangerous play to do, especially in, like, right now we are in what would be considered a bull market, which is where prices are going up. So if you for shorting anything is just dangerous, because you make a profit, and then if it goes up a lot, you have theoretically unlimited losses on your trade. So it's
Yeah.
only something that you do if you're really, really confident, like Michael Burry was, when the housing market crashed. And for most people it doesn't pay off, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
A lot of it.
for our audience,
Yeah.
the math behind shorting is you can only gain double the amount of money you put in, but you can lose everything and then some. Whereas buying a stock normally is the opposite. People can get all kinds of interested in a stock and pile into the moon, but you can only lose what you've put in.
So an
Yeah.
average normal person wouldn't want to play shorts.
No. An average normal person, you want to find companies you believe in, companies that you buy all the time, or companies that you are particularly interested in and know about. And you can build your own portfolio and then add ETFs or indexes.
Well, that's the thing that I assumed all of this before I got to know Jacqueline. And so I kind of wish she were here to be able to talk about how she trades, but and she is not a very wealthy person. So so I just think it's interesting that we have these all of these sort of abstractions in our stock market, and that they prevent like the average normal person from understanding what's happening very well. And then that alone creates a burden that it creates a division between people who can and people who can't really uh, receive the gains from such
So
difficult to
yeah.
understand things.
So I just wanted to say two things.
Mhm.
One thing is this: when I started investing, I was also in a situation where, just a few weeks ago, I was considering which one of my essential pieces of equipment I would have to sell to make it through. Um, and that was one of the reasons I decided to start investing. I want to give a shout out to the Dumb Money group. They have a form of investing called social arbitration, which is where essentially it's just pay attention to the world, look at things that you'll notice before the suits at Wall Street, and make smart investments, right? And they also support like, well, once you start thinking of a dollar as potentially being $100, you will find money to invest, right? No matter what your situation is, like you will find money to squirrel away. In any case, the other thing is too, we're all yang gang. And the reason why a lot of people that kind of know more about the markets are out for blood right now against Melvin Capital and pushing GameStop is because nobody likes shorts. Because one of the nice things about the whole yang gang philosophy was the idea of abundance mentality, right? Grow everything instead of knocking everything down, right?
And
So
shorting is really against
why
that.
would you what?
Shorting is truly against that. Like in its
yeah.
capitalist nature, it wants companies to fail.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds
by
me
short,
of that reminds me of a situation where a corporation can take out life insurance on their own managers. It feels like you're kind of betting on them, like, well, if they die, we'll still make money.
Yeah.
Just really doesn't
Yeah.
seem like a very human sort of thing to do. And then it's like, not the widow doesn't get the money, the family doesn't get the money, the corporation does, right? Because they're missing their manager. Very strange.
Yeah. So there's also another thing I thought of that was very, very important. Is that one of the ways a lot of people took advantage of this opportunity and started with very little money, and some became millionaires, is they used options, which is an investment tool to get more leverage out of their money for more risk.
So
One of the dangers.
Isn't the option the same thing as you can put an option that's positive or negative? There's a put and a call.
Yes. But the main reason I'm bringing it up is it's one of the ways that investors that don't have a lot of money can get leverage on that money and actually build a significant amount and have some class mobility. And one of the dangers.
That's actually what Jacqueline used to talk about, was the options. That's what she trades in.
Yeah.
So can you tell us how is that different than a regular trade?
Sure, but the reason I brought it up, and actually one of the reasons I think it was important for me to come onto this show and actually talk about it, is because Wall Street doesn't like the big boys don't like to lose control of the game, right? And if you look at a lot of these media pieces about what's happening, instead of blaming Melvin Capital for illegally naked shorting and creating this once in a lifetime situation, they're saying things like retail investors having access to options and investing irresponsibly is what created the situation. One of the dangers of one of the dangerous potential outcomes of this situation is that Wall Street could lobby for reforms, just like how you can't do day trading if you have less than 25 grand in your account. They may do similar restrictions for options. They may require you to have extra collateral, more liquidity in your account than most people can afford. They may just make it much harder for a small investor to work their way up. That's one of the biggest dangers politically of this event.
It really is.
That's exactly what Jacqueline used to complain about. Was she would say that
Yep.
she was limited from trading, as a day trader, because she didn't have enough money to play ball with the big,
Pattern
big
day
boys.
trade rule. Yeah.
And
So
that's
she
why I
had
fight so hard for the monthly cash, because we need to make every American a big player in our capitalist game if we want to call ourselves a capitalist nation.
Yeah.
And she said that she was limited by how many times she could day trade in per day or per week, whereas the big boys did not have to follow those rules.
Yes, and there's a whole rabbit hole of other advantages, but yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how options are different from just regular trades?
Yes. So I'm going to totally steal Dumb Money's example of this.
Okay.
So imagine like you live in a town and you overhear that a baseball stadium is going to be built very close to and below a neighborhood. right? And so the houses in that neighborhood, their property value is about to go skyrocket because they essentially can look out the window into the game. They have great seats, like they have a great view, this, that, and the other. And so you want to make a profit off of this, but you only have, let's say you have like a, 100 grand or so, right? So you can't possibly buy all 10 or 20 houses in the neighborhood. Let's say 10 houses. But what you can do is you can go knock on the door and you can talk to the homeowner and you can be like, hey, I'll pay you $10,000 right now. And in exchange, you give me the right to purchase your house at the current market value for until 6 months from now, right? So the homeowner says, sure, of course. He doesn't know that that a baseball stadium is being built and his property value is going to go up. So he takes the 10 grand and you part ways. A few months later, the baseball stadium has been announced and the property value is double. You go back to that homeowner and you say, hey, I paid you 10 grand. I get to buy your house at what is now half of the current market value. And that's kind of what options are. So when you purchase an option, you're paying a fraction of the value of the share upfront to be able to purchase 100 of them at the current price, or to sell 100 of them at the current price. So it's very little risk upfront compared to just buying 100 shares. To use an example from my own trades, BlackBerry recently made some price action. I bought a contract for BlackBerry when it was about $7 a share, and that contract cost me $27. It was a call contract for $27. So for paying $27 upfront for a few months, I got the right to purchase BlackBerry shares for $7 each. If I were to just purchase 100 shares of BlackBerry, that would be $700 at the time. So BlackBerry since then went up
So
to $8,
as
$9, or
long
$10. Yep. Yep.
as long as the price goes above what you had optioned it for, then you'll make money and you can actually do it without putting your own money in. Like you just instantaneously get the gain. But if it loses money,
Well,
I
yes,
mean,
and
if
a
it's
lot of people think
losing not money but losing the stock price, the stock price is going down and it's actually below $7, then what would happen?
then you can lose up to the $27 in my example that I put in, right? So
That's
like
it?
let's say
All you lose is that $27?
if you are buying a call, if you're paying for a contract to be able to purchase 100 of a share, all you stand to lose is the premium that you put in. And a lot of people, and this is part of the whole institutional messaging that they try to make trading scary. They say, oh, you can lose your entire investment. Well, it's true. Yes, you can lose your entire investment. But in that case, it was $27 to give me control over 100 shares, which would have cost me $700 if I was just buying them outright. And so that
Actually own
27,
them. Mhm.
yes, well, for a period of time, you have the option to do something with them. So because it went up, I ended up selling that contract for $500 within a few weeks.
So
If I had put, yeah,
why would do these things exist at all? Because they're just so counterintuitive. Like I can
Well,
control 100 shares without having to actually own them. Why
they're
wouldn't I want to do that?
they're balance sheet advantages for companies. The reason a company does anything is because the house always wins. Most people will lose out and never actually take up their option, so they just pay the company to have that contract. The company gets to keep all the shares and all the money that it gets paid. That's why it exists.
Okay,
But
so when the time of the option comes, right? You have the option. There's a specific time at which the option ends. Is that
yes.
true?
So
So at that
so what,
moment,
yeah.
the stock never changes hands. You just get money or you lose money.
So
The
there's a
end.
few things you can do with an option. You can either sell the option back to somebody else as it gains or loses value, which for someone like myself that started with very little money, that was the way I built my account, right? Because the other thing you can do with an option is at any time you can exercise it, meaning you can make good on the contract. I had a contract to buy 100 shares at $7 a share. If I had $700, I could have exercised it, and then I could have done whatever I wanted with those shares. So one other thing that they could do potentially is be like, okay, well, you're only allowed to exercise options and then sell the share. You can't just sell the contract. That would make options completely worthless as a form of leverage or a way to make money for investors that didn't have a lot of it to begin with.
Mm.
And yeah, it's not free money. Like Sheridan was saying, for calls, most of them expire what is known as out of the money. They expire worthless. So you really have to be sure of what you're doing and make an educated bet. I would personally argue that it is not as difficult as it may seem to make an educated bet. If we were looking at, for example, GameStop, right? The public sentiment around GameStop, largely because of media and so on and so forth from investors, was that they were just going to fail. If you were looking at it, like now that we're seeing a lot of really good research on their position, even before the stock run up, we saw that they were actually in a really strong position, especially considering that we were at the tail end of a long console cycle, right? So like you were saying,
Not
like
just
you're saying
tail
that you're
end of a
someone that's
long
not an investor.
console cycle. We're entering a new console cycle.
Correct, but the bear case has been going for a while. GameStop was being shorted at the tail end of a very long console cycle.
True.
So anyway, but the pandemic, I think, would have, automatically said to me, anything video game related is going up, including
and that is
GameStop,
proof.
especially
Yes, and you were right.
especially GameStop. So
Yeah, and you were right, and that's why I wanted to bring this up. That is proof that investing smartly is actually a lot more simple than Wall Street would like to make it out to be. Right.
It
One
really
of the reasons why these hedge funds are so angry is because now a lot of people through this situation, following it closely, are getting very financially educated. They're getting to understand how the markets work, how all these numbers interact together to make profit, and they're realizing, oh, you don't need to give your money to Melvin Capital and sign a contract that says you can't take that money back for 3 years, right? And you don't need to pay them like percentages and fees and this, that, and the other to invest your money for you. You can do it yourself, and you can beat the market consistently.
So I will say, as amazing as options are as a financial tool, Robinhood and these other trading apps, which give rise to the retail investor name, do provide dark pools, which are balance sheet conglomerations of cash. They aren't actually as closely tied to the market and have some delayed action. So you can have some holding the bag priorities with these dark pool institutions. So I do recommend using like official brokerages like Charles Schwab or Vanguard or Fidelity or any of these other ones.
Well, just as anything else, I think somebody said the phrase to me: if the service is free, then you are the product, right? And so with Robinhood, one of the reasons that like my I use it is other real brokerages won't approve me for options trading because they would consider it too high risk for me, right? Because of my net worth and this, that, and the other. Robinhood doesn't care. They'll approve anyone for it because they scout.
I know, and the thing is that they'll just accept the balance sheet cash. And if there's any major action, like if the government steps in and says that some gains were actually illegal, which I would be truly astounded if the government did that, then Robinhood is going to be the one that's going to be left with nothing.
Yeah.
Or rather, the Robinhood users.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So that's
it sounds like some people really don't have a choice because these large firms are not
And
friendly.
that's kind of why Robinhood and these dark pool institutions arose, because the government really hasn't been doing its job upholding capitalism. It's been just giving money to the rich and saying fuck all to everyone else.
Yeah.
So I mean, for the same reason that PayPal has risen, right? It's because we have more and more poor people in the world who are untrusted by the large banks. right? If you don't have money, you can't create money because you're not able to borrow like a wealthy person can. And a lot of this stock trading on, borrowed money. So
And
But
like
that's where Wall
interesting.
Street bets could really stand up and shine if they actually had guts to pull real centralized leadership together. If they made an actual hedge fund that organized millions of people around fundamental fights against short sellers, they could really make billions for the
you,
millions of people
you
behind them. But
So
and the people who have tons of money, they don't lose it because these hedge funds, they get paid whether they're losing money or getting money, because the people who invest with them pay them, and they just keep that no matter what happens to the money that's getting invested. So
They get
they're
their
using these
salary.
cheats. They get their salaries. Exactly. You don't get a salary when you're investing your own money. They
Mhm,
do. So even that $3.8 billion that they lost, they're still
mhm,
making something from all the people who have paid them.
mm. Unbelievable.
it
But
is.
totally our system right now. Do you Ryan, do you think if you were able to make some reforms in the system that were beneficial to the average person, um, other than saying, well, we have these rules already, why don't you enforce them, FBI? Or, who is responsible, right?
that would be the SEC. But
The
yeah, I
SEC?
mean, at the end of the day, reforms don't matter if nothing is enforced, right? The SEC will go after the little guy, but rarely do they go after the big guys.
So how
At
do
least
we
that's
get them to do their job? And what
um,
punishment can they give anyway? Can they put them in jail?
yes or fine. Yeah, I think actually there's a member of Wall Street Bets that famously faked an SEC filing, and
Ooh.
he got thrown into prison, I believe. So so they can do that. Um, but I just want to go back really quick, Sheridan. For the third time, you have mentioned something about whether if Wall Street Bets had guts, they would do something. And one of the things I got to say, as someone who is an erstwhile member of Wall Street Bets, is that I think it takes guts to stick to the discipline of avoiding the definition of market manipulation and just letting the good data win, and individually deciding to follow the good data, to what extent to follow the good data, making their own decisions, and just trusting that everyone else is making their own decisions and following the data. And if the data works out, then everybody wins, rather than doing what somebody tells you. Because I mean, that's how most people invest, right? Most people, they'll go to a hedge fund to have someone manage their money. They'll invest in ETFs, this, that, and the other. And if for example Wall Street Bets became some kind of big institution that had a leader and a central mind, this, that, and the other, it would eventually become one of the very problems that it was formed to solve. You
That's
just
the
can't avoid it
age-old
with that scale.
struggle of capital and labor. Does institutions have the proper resources, the proper people, and the proper direction and momentum to make what the market needs happen? That's the point of the free market. And I would love to
Okay.
see if Wall Street Bets actually formalized as a real financial advice institution to make these big plays. But they
Should
probably won't.
should Wall Street bets be legal?
Oh yeah, 100%. They've done nothing wrong. They actually exposed major criminal action.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing illegal about it, and the community has been very, very good about policing itself, as far as illegal activity goes, and educating each other.
So, that was another thing that you did mention, that the particular the accusations made by Discord about, really some sort of bad behaviors having to do with, I don't know, sounded like racism was one of the charges. or these types of things, you don't feel that there was any proof of it, and it didn't actually happen
Well,
in the community.
the article that was linked to me says that The Verge looked into this, and we have seen that there's evidence of these accusations. There's no evidence actually supplied. And
Hmm.
when you have a community that at this point there are 4.1 million subscribers to Wall Street Bets, right? And we have seen, I mean, I speaking as an individual member who reads the Reddit, I have seen that there have been concentrated efforts by people who are either sympathetic to the hedge funds side or paid off to try to confuse the community or to try to spread fear and doubt in the community or try to misdirect the community. Um, Given what I have seen from my own personal interactions in the Discord, it would not surprise me to find out that some people were paid to plant some unsavory messages. And again, I haven't seen any myself. And in that article where they were saying, "Oh yeah, we saw evidence, this, that, and the other," they didn't even put any of that evidence in the article. So to me, it's a little tasteless to go along with an article like that and to help cast aspersions on this community. Because what I've seen from this community, for the most part, is something that is really incredible. Right? They've democratized financial research. They actually, despite the way they like talk, like some people could get off put by the fact that they call themselves like retarded or autistic, that kind of thing, and I totally get that. But if you actually look at what they're saying to each other, they're giving each other really good advice, telling each other to be responsible, right? They're giving each other good data. They're putting a lot of effort in and stuff like that. Like the quality of the community is very high in my opinion.
Okay. I wanted to introduce everyone to someone who is here from our Twitch chat. Invited them to join us because, well, at their behest. So, would you like to introduce yourself? Go ahead and unmute. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just George. I just came to chat. That's all.
Hi, George.
How's it
Nice to
going?
have a name. So, you were following along, and what was it that you wanted to, also speak about with us?
Oh no, I was just really interested because I was kind of in the same boat as everybody else, kind of going, "What the heck is going on?" Like I was kind of lost. So I'm intrigued to learn because this is all new to me. So it's a great conversation. That's all.
Okay. Thank you for
Cool.
joining us, and
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
feel free to unmute and talk whenever you feel comfortable.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
thought you said you
So,
were from Georgia. Oh,
Well, to Ryan's point, I was the one that shared that Verge article, and I shared it specifically because of it had the proper quote from the Discord chat for WSB, and you can really read it in the text that they provide it's a lackluster defense, to provide an understatement. They say it was golden in the chat room, which is obviously, like, who describes a chat as golden? It's just
yeah.
all the
Huh.
way that the defense was described was very disheartening and not exactly like specific on what their concerns were. If they had said, "We think that this may be a coordinated effort," or that there are some unsavory characters, or that we are still unfamiliar with catching all unmoderated content, or if they'd worked closer with Discord, because Discord had said that this had been going on for months. So yes, they could have had some people that were in that channel in bad faith and or being paid to be malignant. They, as moderators, could have absolutely controlled the situation, but they chose not to. And it
So I
could be
just gotta
for
say,
virtues
yeah,
of decentralization, but it still goes against Discord's mandates.
yeah. So I just gotta say that you have the right to your opinion. I disagree, and I think that choosing to find these ways to see a community in that particular light, when at large that community has demonstrated a lot of extreme positivity that I have not seen anywhere else. Like there have been so many threads of people talking about what they've done to share to share the gains from this event within their own community and spread the wealth, to teach each other how to achieve financial independence, to teach each other these skills, the knowledge, how to be responsible, to provide each other with good research and data that normally you would have to pay for. I mean, to me, trying to use something that I would consider to be a weak argument to cast a negative light on a community that I've seen so much positivity out of it just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the
Now,
other
hold
thing
on.
is you're part of this community. It's not like you're just an outside observer. Like you've
I
been
don't mean
in it and
to.
experiencing it for a while.
I don't
Yeah.
mean to cast a negative light on the community. I love the community. I love this activism. This is what capitalism was made for, to overthrow the monarchy, to overthrow the centralized power. But
You just
it's
don't like the statement they issued because they don't talk the way you like, and I understand.
no. It's not that. It's that if a private company like Discord has tried for months to work with a group that forgoes solid leadership, then it is the leadership's fault for giving that community a bad image, not the community.
Well,
The
I think
leaders are at fault.
I think the main difference of opinion here might be that that Sheridan is sort of a kind of believes the official line from Discord, whereas I think Ryan is saying that having been in the community himself, he believes that this is not an honest assessment of what happened. Also, what I wanted to know was, isn't Wall Street Bets originally a Reddit group, and that Reddit group is still fine?
Yes, I mean it comes down to an issue of the policy between Reddit and Discord. In this case, it seems like Discord wanted to be safe. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on why they decided to take this action. I think that
So like
I don't really,
Discord.
yeah.
So I'm saying, like, even if Discord were to try to, stop their Discord activities, they're still
Right.
able to meet in their original, location, if you can call it that. That
Well, I
the group
mean,
hasn't been
Discord was another
disbanded or,
tool.
right.
Well, it was a very useful tool. It was a different format, right? Like, the Yanggang Roundtable meeting on Reddit, like having its own subreddit, is a very different purpose than this Discord server. And
Mhm.
there was not. I mean, I didn't see any evidence of this having been an issue for months either, right? Despite
Mhm.
the official line. So this goes back to a conversation that we've been having as a society ever since Parler was deplatformed by the CD and Amazon, and Trump was banned from Twitter, Facebook, and everything else. Right? A lot of
Mhm.
people, like Angela Merkel of Germany, the president of Mexico, a lot of people, a dissident, a Russian dissident today, so many people have been coming out and saying that big tech has too much power, and it can arbitrarily decide like who to deplatform for what basis, right? They don't have to put any evidence out that this community actually did or said these things that have been going on for months, this, that, and the other. They just do it, and then you either buy the line or you say, okay, well, as a private company, they can do whatever they want. Okay, well, hedge funds are private companies, right? So should they be allowed to naked short? Pharmaceutical companies are private companies, right? Should they
Well,
be allowed to set
so
whatever prices they want?
this is actually a very uniquely American thing with free speech. I
Yeah.
definitely toe the line with media companies because media companies are private companies. If the if the people truly feel that there needs to be a central, balanced, equal voice for every person that every person can access, then there needs to be greater funding in public journalism, like PBS. But the fact is, there isn't. So it is up to private
Yeah.
companies to provide their own directive.
even PBS really isn't all that public owned. I mean, it's there's got corporate sponsors.
Oh
So
yeah, but it's
interesting.
What's
way
the
more public
avenue we
than,
would
let's
need
say, Discord.
Well, but then what's the avenue we must go down to correct these wrongs? I mean, I like actionable solutions. I just feel like there's not a lot of solutions presented,
Well,
nor a path to follow.
So this, yeah.
I'm running for Congress, and I do think that there is something Congress can do to at least provide some semblance of balance, and that is to reenact the fairness doctrine from the 1960s, which mandated that major cable news stations had to provide equal time or equal voices on specific controversial issues. And I think that would be a great first step in providing more balance in our public narrative.
Well, I don't really agree with that necessarily because I don't think every side is always equal, and
Oh, I
so
agree,
equal
but
time isn't
like
always.
when I talk about controversial, I mean like the ones that we would consider equal enough.
Well, I mean, it would have to be something where I don't know. That this is a topic that might be a little bit too big to address now, so late at night. I
Too
wanted
big
to
to
go back
fail.
to the I want to go back to the Wall Street Bets community, right? I think that it's going to survive this Discord issue because they have, according to Reddit, 4.1 million degenerates over there and 513K buying FDs. What are FDs?
Financial derivatives.
Okay.
They're essentially short-dated contracts that are generally have a very low chance of being profitable. But because of this situation, market mechanics are causing the price to spike very consistently. These financial derivatives, which are usually considered no better than a lottery ticket, are actually turning out to be consistently profitable. But it's an anomalous situation.
All right. And I noticed they haven't taken down their Discord yet from the Reddit, even though
Yeah.
Discord has taken them down. But
Yeah.
according to them, they had about 250,000 people gathered on Discord, which is a pretty big Discord group, but not nearly, the number that have gathered at the Reddit. And so hopefully, that it's not that they have no, ways of getting together and discussing things and supporting each other. So I feel pretty good about that at least.
Right. Yeah. And
Mhm.
again, this is something where people are going to differ. I know Faye was saying that there's like solutions oriented, this, that, and the other, but the solution here is going to depend on the perspective of the person, right? Because, for example, Sheridan doesn't think that there's an issue with social media companies being able to deplatform communities and not have to give a certain standard of evidence, right? They just say that this happened and you have to accept it. A lot of work can go into building a community, whether or not it was a small fraction of the user base, right? And as a private company, it is it's a free service. But these are the ways that we communicate now primarily. Like most of us here don't watch the news. And especially with lockdowns, right? This is how we keep in touch with each other. So, I mean, again, the solutions are going to depend on your perspective. If you think
Well,
it's fine,
it's
yeah,
like veto power, right? If I'm on
yeah,
a network and I like being on a forum because I want to help protect women or something, and I speak
mhm,
up against what the actual platform is doing. I mean, this is just an example that actually happened to me. So I used to be a professional cuddle buddy. And so I would actively put in messages on how to protect women with like language and how to like do all this stuff to like empower them and consent, right? And as I was investigating other people, I found out there was a lot of violations and they only had 2 male moderators on the website, right? And so then I ended up making a big stink that this platform was all across the whole world and they only had 2 male moderators and there was a significant amount of trauma occurring. Next thing you know, within at least a month I got let go, and all the people, all the contacts I created, people who I wanted to empower by giving them a voice, cut off, veto, right? And this platform had all of that, and I couldn't even fight against it. And now I have not just lost the ability to have speech, but I lost connections to real people that I cared about, and that's the only way I knew how to find them. And I think that is a big deal, especially with this Discord issue that we're talking about. That's exactly what's happened, is they've vetoed your community, and you're just what are you supposed to do?
And I agree that that is a hard reality, but it comes down to you need to think about if Facebook is going to create its own court to adjudicate these issues, or if we have to rely on the actual legal system that we already have in place to properly adjudicate these. What state were you in? Because most have right to work laws that unfortunately protect employers so that they can just fire anyone they want for any reason.
Online platform that spanned the whole world, and I was traveling, so it's not like, I mean, I was nomadic, and
I
that was
mean,
my
like,
source of income.
where they were specifically incorporated. Where you're incorporated is where your
Different
laws are.
country, I think.
Well, depending on the country, you should have some workers' protections that you can take them to court about. If you,
Yes, but not if you're broke and
Only, yes, you
That's
must have
true.
money to go to
that's
court.
true, and that's why we're here fighting for basic income, because our systems are inaccessible to poor people.
because they literally cut off my income, and I had no income, and I was in a state that I didn't know anybody, and
This is a this is a community. When they talked about this, it was a community of, it's a community forum, right? But we as content creators are not only participating in forums like, Discord, but also we actually create content that has to, that rests with like YouTube and Spotify and Twitch and Anchor.fm. Like we have our, show put together in different ways and recorded and kept on servers in different places. And if any of these platforms were to suddenly decide, oh well, there was somebody who maybe cursed too much, or somebody who said something inflammatory, or tried to give some financial advice when it's not allowed, then they can, try to punish us, or just simply say, well, we don't need this podcast, so we'll just take it away.
Yeah, actually,
Mhm.
Roberto Blake actually made a video about this where he said everybody now needs like a website or special hosting where you can like tell your audience to go over there. Because right now, what's happening that's so volatile, even if you do have an account and even if you are kind of like, showing your stuff, even if you're not outright banned, they can like hide your stuff. The algorithm can make sure that like somebody doesn't get your notifications, somebody doesn't know what you put out or what you wanted. So everybody who, if you're not doing it as a hobby and you want to grow it into like a message or a business, have somewhere on something you need to pay most likely, but where you control the flow and that they just can't take it away from you, either at a Wix site or a Squarespace or something like that. Because seriously, like the big players, they can just say like, you're not important anymore, bye. And all of that audience you spent so much time accumulating, poof, if you didn't get any kind of email list is the best email list. So that's what I gotta say.
like a whole learning curve right there. I mean, if you don't know technology and you just spent all of what you had mental bandwidth on learning this one platform because maybe you're older, maybe you're busy, now you have to learn and start again. It's like everything crumbles. And you're right, an email list would be great, but then you have
Yeah,
to use another platform, and then that's exhaustive. And then if they keep
that,
doing that, you're canceled, you know?
that's so wrong. Yeah, you're right.
So
It's
this
so wrong on so many levels. I mean, like how this is happening. I mean, we need to lobby for like a people's platform and stuff like that. That's not connected to like big anything, but I don't know how we're gonna get that. Maybe Sheridan can help when he finally gets in. You can bring this up.
I'd
We're
love
gonna
to
be
bring
live with
all of this
Sheridan.
up on a floor debate and have it with like all the progressive members of the House. Because there are
We'll
some
be
really good opportunities for getting real solutions, at least talked about.
Yeah, we're going to be live with Sheridan as he announces his campaign this coming Saturday. So stay tuned for that.
The next
Is that
Saturday,
going to be at
February 6th, is when I'm going to be on
next?
with
Okay.
the Yanggang Roundtable.
Okay, we have another guest this Saturday. That's right. So thank you for being so patient, Sheridan. I'm sure you'll be even more prepared with that extra time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's still rolling up. I'm getting daily hits, so you know people are at least responding to my message.
Yeah. So I mean, the question that we're looking at is very complicated, and sometimes it gets very political when we talk about when everybody was talking about Trump, being banned from Twitter. I think most of us here at the podcast, we're just pretty much thankful to not have to hear from him at
Yeah,
2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it was just a personal thing.
it
But
does.
now that we're talking about, yeah, but if we talk about something that you care about,
Right.
something that
Well,
you're
that's the thing.
actually,
Like Trump
you know,
has ways of, he has all these like aides and a phone book, and he's a boomer and everything. So if he's banned from all kinds of like digital technology, there's still the contact list on his phone and all of these people that he knows. But when we're talking about like someone who's, let's say they're 13 or 15 years old, and their best friends are through like Facebook or Twitter, and they lose like access to them, and they have no other way of getting back in touch, and they've built like deep relationships with them, it can be devastating. It can be really devastating, you know.
Yeah, but for
yeah.
someone
So
like Trump, a public official who has access to
Yeah.
millions of people's minds, they need to be deplatformed when they're inciting violence.
Yeah, no,
I
that's what I'm
completely
saying.
agree
That
there's a different
that's
scale here, but I think it comes down to funding. Like the
right. Yeah,
IRS
so
no.
goes after poor people mainly because they are broke as shit.
I I get it. I get it. No. Trump, of course. Like you can't be spreading these kinds of messages to thousands and thousands of people. I'm just talking about like the people who need the most help, and the people who are the most disenfranchised, where they can't even afford a phone bill, and their main method of getting through to their friends could be social media. You never know. And then that just poof disappears, and they're left with nothing. That's not right. That's
So,
like, for the most vulnerable, we need something in place. But with
I'm
Trump, yeah,
yeah.
sorry.
So when we start talking about things that we really care about, communities that we actually belong to, then now we've got to talk about, okay, what should we have some standards? And if we do have some standards, who should be the arbiter of these standards? Should it be each company gets to make up their own standards, and then they are the arbiters also, and they're the judge and the jury, and they make all the decisions? Or do we all have a say in some of these corporations, even though they are private corporations, but their um corporation and their money and their wealth and all of the
there,
things that they
there,
are is built up by humans that like us who
there,
participate in it.
there has to be, for sure. There has to be a social media public option. I think that's the best idea. Somewhere
Um,
where like that can compete with the private ones, where you know what your rights are and they're not private. Like, but since our dumb government is so behind the curb in like technology, I think that would have been a great idea if Yang could say like, this is your social media public option, and like it's free and you don't need to pay
Oh,
for it.
okay.
So it could be
I'm
like,
understanding you now. What you're saying is leave the private corporations be how they do it themselves right now, but then also have a public option. And how about you, Ryan? I hear you trying to chime in here.
oh, I was just gonna say, we're getting onto a topic that I'm that's kind of beyond what I came here to talk about. So I was wondering if you guys had any last questions about the whole GameStop thing before it's probably best if I take off.
Okay. Well, we might be wrapping up anyway. So what do you
Oh, okay.
does anybody have a last question or last discussion about the GameStop issue?
have kind of so if what is the red flag we should be looking for if bad behavior starts or like if something is going south, what like kind of caution do we need to practice if we do see things turning to a more I don't know, not a good turn, in your opinion, Ryan?
So if you see regulation coming down the line, if you see a lot of news media saying, oh, rampant retail investors irresponsibly use leverage options, this, that, and the other, and we need to regulate the markets so, pensions, this and that aren't affected, then that's something to pay attention to, because even if you don't believe that you want to invest for yourself, which is fine, a lot of people, uh, uniquely in America, have access to an opportunity with investments to work up from almost nothing to being to being able to benefit with the prosperity of these companies. Right? Anyone can do it. There's plenty of stories of people just studying really hard and working really hard, and day trading themselves from like $500, $1,000, all the way to millions. And so if off the back of this event, you know, Wall Street, big money is out for blood and they try to push for regulations to make that harder, whether or not you personally think that it's going to affect you, it is absolutely something that you should fight against, because it is one of the rare opportunities that is available to us as Americans to have class mobility, no matter how we started out. And you may actually want to take advantage of that at some point in the future yourself, right? You never know. Um, that is, I mean, without that, there's going to be one huge less way to climb the ladder in this country.
Yeah, this isn't just about class solidarity. This is about having class mobility.
Yeah, there's a reason why billionaires like Elon Musk and Chamath have publicly lent their voice to this. Is because, in Chamath's case, his first job was at Burger King, and now he's like a billionaire, right? He knows what it's like to work his way up, and he understands how important it is for the little guy to have options, so that they can gain capital if they choose, and there's a new wave of investments or investing strategy. There's a woman named Kathy Wood who's become a hit in the finance world. And her whole thing with ARK Investments is invest in things and direct capital into things that will change the world and make it a better place, right? And so by investing, you can literally vote with your dollar to help build the world you want to live in, right? There, you can do political activism, as you're seeing now very clearly. You can do financial activism. So by helping to maintain that ladder up for us in America, I mean, that's going to be hugely important, especially if, depending on how this GameStop situation plays out, the people may realize, oh, all we have to do is study and pay attention to the market, and we can make money, and then we can influence how things go, and we can actually start to control back our power. Like we were, like Andrew Yang was talking about how if we all had, what was it, $100 a year or $250 a year, something like that. We had money that we can only contribute toward a campaign. We could essentially buy back power from Wall Street. Well, this
What
is
he was
showing
talking
us
about was democracy dollars, and
democracy
I
dollars.
fight for
Yes,
that very hard, because I agree with Citizens United. Companies are people. They have their own wants and their own needs that are separate from their employers, their shareholders, and even their board members. But by making that decision, the Supreme Court gagged Americans because most Americans don't have money to make their voice heard.
right. And so the reason it's so important to protect class mobility in the form of investment tools for the average American is because, sure, we can make things better for people with political reform. But political reform takes a lot of time. Generally, it takes generations. And one way that a person can change their life completely in their own lifetime and change the prospects of their future generations and their families is to use the markets and the tools that are available uniquely to Americans to make a better future for themselves and the people around them. So yeah, like you're asking what to look for as far as red flags. If they're calling for regulation and trying to blame it on the little guy, you got to remember this situation only happened because Wall Street, big money, was flouting the law. They were doing illegal things, and if they are able to push through regulations, they're going to do even more illegal things, and we're all going to suffer for it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming on our show tonight at short notice. And thanks everybody, the regular speakers who showed up very quickly and in time for us to actually talk about something that was, happening right this moment. Thank you, George, for dropping in and coming into our Discord. Maybe you will find other programs here. Every Thursday, we try to put the schedule in for the coming weekend. So on Thursday, we'll have a schedule for usually Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I think we're going to skip Friday this week because of us putting in the time today. So thanks to all the listeners. I'd like to invite the regular speakers to give your social media information so people can find you again. I know Ryan can be found at the Reddit group, right? So if you want to try to have a conversation, you can go to the Reddit group. It's called Wall Street Bets. Is that correct?
Yeah, Reddit, Wall Street Bets. It's a fun place.
Okay. So why don't we start with Faye Doney?
Hello. My name is Faye Doney, and you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and TikTok at Tisdoney, Tisdoney. I'm about to go on a really long, fun adventure, so come check it out if you're interested in seeing things on the ground level, because I'm going to try and make sure I take footage and post footage of, what I see with my actual eyeballs and not just what you find on the news media.
I was very impressed with your press pass citing Yanggang
Yeah,
Roundtable.
it looks
Oh,
pretty. It
nice.
should be here tomorrow, I think.
Very
So.
nice.
All right.
I did not know about that.
Okay, Sheridan.
Yes, thank you so much, Ryan, for coming on and having this wonderful discussion about financial markets. It's always such a wonderful time to talk about interesting financial phenomena. I feel like back when the oil spike happened and you were able to get paid for picking up oil for a short time. So thank you all again for this wonderful conversation. If anyone wants to help change this politically, because I do know political change is long, as Ryan alluded to, check out lund2022.com. In a couple years, I am going to Congress to get you $2,000 a month cash from the government, not from a financial bubble.
All right, very good. My name is Faye Koo, and you can find me on Twitter at Palestine Math, PalestineMath. Make America Think Harder. All right,
Thanks for
and
having me.
Ariel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so my name's Ariel. You can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/revolutionary thinking. And I'm also on Twitter as Ariels. Thank you.
Ryan, did you want to say any last words before Shale closes us out?
Oh, and I just want to say, yeah, thanks guys so much for having me for this discussion. I hope you guys got something useful out of it.
Yeah.
I did. It was a very good discussion. I'm really glad we got this in before any kind of spin could happen. Right during the events with a first-hand source. We really appreciate your time and your expertise. And
Thanks.
yeah, thank you again. It's really good to talk to people from all over, all different kinds of people, brought together by basic income advocacy. So it's good. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for talking. Thanks for listening. This was very, very exciting. So we'll see you Saturday because we're skipping tomorrow because we did this instead. So have a good Friday.